We sat here with a tape recorder, just like you have, and I was saying, and they were saying, well, let's talk about, you know, some of these crimes they suspected you of. And I said, well, I can't really talk about them. Well, how do you want to do it? And they said, well, let's figure out some way we can talk about it. And we sat here and negotiated on how are we going to do this. And it wasn't any deception involved at all. It was very deliberate. And they said, well, how about if we do it this way? That I said, well, I'm going to continue to maintain my innocence, but we can do it like based upon what I've read, I would speculate that this would be what might have happened. Okay.
Third person type of thing.
Yeah, and it wasn't I'm going to talk in the third person. It was I'm going to speculate about what I've read and do the same thing the police would do. You know, if they were trying to figure out what happened.
Reconstruct crimes, basic investigative strategy, right?
Right. And so that's basically what happened. They would say, okay, what do you think? What do you think happened at Lake Sammamish? And I said, well, first of all, I don't know what happened. And then we go into this law, and they said, well, we don't like that because we read something and that doesn't really fit with what the police know. I said, well, how if we do it? Okay, we'll do it this way. Okay. And I swear, if you actually sat down and listened to their tapes, you would hear a lot of this nonsense. Okay, and what I've got to tell you, I want you to be clear, is that was not a nice thing to do. First of all, money makes people do things which are sometimes not right, and I think part of the problem with that was the money. And you put your finger on it, making money, especially off of this kind of thing, is really wrong. And I could never do it again because it just, when you get into this kind of thing for profit, just too many bad things happen. And it should, because you shouldn't be doing it. And it was wrong for us to sit here and coldly do what we did, because there are a lot of people out there who read this kind of stuff. And it just didn't work, and it felt bad all the way along. And I look back on it as a learning experience, but I would just rather not say anything anymore than engage in that kind of cruel kind of speculation. And it was just a game, and it was wrong for us both, all of us, to do it.
Became a bestseller.
Huh?
Became a bestseller. It's going to make a hell of a
Well, we did correctly, I guess, anticipate the baser desires of people who oftentimes buy these books, who want to be titillated, or who want to be, have their prurient interests indulged. There are people who read these books for genuine reasons too, and unfortunately, I think more often than not they're misled if that's what they're looking for, because whoever has read any of these books does not know anything about me or what really happened. And I don't say that with any sense of being smug or anything. That's just the way it is.
Well, you're an individual. How many people really know other people as well as you know yourself?
Sure.
There have been other people who have written books who contend that they've known you prior to any alleged criminal involvement, and that they feel that they know Ted Bundy. What are your thoughts on that?
But
they really have.
For that, to the extent that
I think you know what I'm speaking of.
Yeah. Well, they had an opportunity to, and they certainly had genuine access. For example, there's access to.
Is that food hot? You might want to
No, it's always cold.
Okay.
No, you don't have to worry about that. No.
Okay.
Access to me was really very superficial. She's in her own way, under certain conditions, a very nice person. I have no animosity toward her, but there's no question that she grossly overplayed what was a passing acquaintance. And all we did was have our shifts at a call-in crisis. Oh, I remember. No, I remember very clearly. But she had absolutely no basis to write a book the way I understand she did, or claim that that in her own way she knew me. It would be like if you were to have a co-worker and you would work beside them for a couple hours a day for 6 months, and then they would go away, and then they would write a book all about you. That's what happened with that person wouldn't know you anymore. My former fiance, girlfriend, friend, and what have you.
Yeah.
And she, of course, had a far better opportunity to get to know me. I mean, I would have to.
Did you read that book right here?
No, I didn't.
Wondered if you were comfortable with your insights at all.
I didn't read it, and again, I just don't, because you see, even though, bless her heart, she had an opportunity to know me. We knew each other for several years, and if anybody knew me during that period, if anybody knew me, okay, it was. Oh, yes. A lovely person that she is and was. We were only just, real remote friends. I mean, we never lived together. We only saw each other a few times over many years. No, saw me day in and day out and lived with me day in and day out for years.
Just for your information, usually is referred to quite frequently in the writings of your life as a person whom you cared about. Things just didn't work out for one reason or the other. True, I don't know if this, in absence of you having an opportunity to read them, that's why
I've read parts of them. I'm not going to, I don't want to mislead you. I've read parts of them, and I'm aware that they've made that characterization, and that they've also, there are a lot of psychological theories about Ted Bundy, which are just a bunch of bullshit, and it doesn't bother me, but people who read them and believe them are going to be misled if they think, for example, that and I somehow broke up, and this was such a traumatic episode in my life that I just went off the deep end. Well, that's simply not true. That's simply totally, completely not true. And I don't care whether anybody believes me or not. I mean, I know in my heart, and I can tell you that, not that it's important necessarily in retrospect, but knew me. Now, whether or not when she sat down to write her memoirs, she put in there the way it really was. Because, you see, by the time she wrote the book, the Ted Bundy she was confronted with, at least in the public consciousness, was something different. So I think a lot of people, former friends and even relatives, are a little bit leery. Did I really know him? And maybe their perceptions of me will change. You've seen this. Well, yeah, I saw that in him. I could tell when he was 5 years old, because people don't want to feel like they've been fooled, or people don't want to feel like they've known someone and yet they didn't know him. And so they'll figure out all sorts of things to say. Yeah, well, I could tell that he was capable of that, because he didn't open the door for me one time.
You didn't kick the cat.
Yeah, kick the cat. There's this one, I think somebody put it in their book. I heard this. I used to jump out from behind bushes.
Who did?
and scare. I also used to walk on railroad tracks and see how long I could walk on the rails without falling off. I mean, come on, give me a break. Jumping out from behind bushes was never my thing. When it came to, it was just a playful, childish thing that I did. As like when I was in the shower, I'd sometimes throw a cup of cold water to get her out of the shower. So there's a lot of myth and about and misunderstanding about, I guess, everything.
But it sells.
It sells, and unfortunately, though, I think it creates a problem, misconceptions that I think go deeper. And maybe I think that I'm sure that there are people in law enforcement or psychologists who are trying to become more knowledgeable about this kind of thing, who read these and take them as fact. And I think they're misled. I think really the only approach to be taken is your approach, in a systemized way. Gather the evidence without any preconceptions and without all the theories that are proposed in the media or in books.
Of course, you haven't read our book yet.
Well, it can't be too much different.
You're familiar with all the pictures of the alleged victims, the hair part in the middle and all that?
I've
Who do you
seen.
propose that they are saying that represents? I mean, I'm sure, others have, does that person exist in Ted Bundy's life? I mean, we've, perceived that quite frequently if someone is out targeting victims, or maybe representative, and there's truth to that because we've seen it. A number of people apparently in a situation in which, you've been suspected, think that that trend is there. Does that person actually exist? Does that make sense to you at all? I mean, was there a dominant person in your life that they are basically prescribing as having represented these alleged victims?
Well, let me approach that question.
I'm not trying to ask you.
No, I hear you. No, let me approach this question this way. To begin with.
I mean, I've never seen Liz or Diane, so I don't know if they're saying that it's one of them or
Mm-hmm.
somebody, whomever.
Again, that's pop psychology, I think.
Yeah, sure.
People are fishing around. They want a hook. They want a smoking gun. They want cause and effect, and it's not going to be there. It's not going to be there. I think all you have to do is go back to the late 60s, early 70s, and if you could recreate somehow the styles of the times, I wouldn't be surprised if you found out that young women between the ages of 16 and 26, 99 out of 100 had long hair with a part of the hair.
Some of the 12-year-olds did, sisters did.
Yeah. That was the prevalent style of the time. So I don't think that is indicative of anything in particular. And talking about photographs, another one of the myths that I'm just appalled by in a way. It doesn't bother me. I'm appalled.
Is there a difference between appalled and not bothered?
Well, appalled that people are so, I guess maybe so desperate to find something that makes sense to them. But they always have, many of the articles in the books include a series of photographs of me. A half a dozen photographs. Many faces of Ted Bundy, the great disguise artist. And they have all these photographs, and they all look different. They do, really. They all look different, I agree. But they were taken over a 10-year span of time. They have my graduation photograph in 65. They have my arrest photograph in 75. They're all taken at different... Even, look at you, either one of you, if you were to grow a beard, innocently grow a beard, and over the course of just a couple months, photographs when you are in different dress and different moods, different times of day, different expressions, you're going to look very, very different. And you're not trying to look different. But this is the myth they created, that I was a master of disguise. In fact, this is one of, sometimes we kid around the back, and one of the guys got to call me the master of disguise. That was my nickname.
The title for a book, I guess, right? Surprised nobody's picked up on that one yet.
Yeah. But I think that because people believe that when if somebody sneaks around or goes around doing these things, they just assume that they disguise themselves. In really, in some way. What they don't understand is that you don't have to, and no one has to disguise themselves, really. Because people's minds, eyewitness, you know anything about eyewitness identification?
Oh, absolutely.
It is the worst form of evidence in court. It is also the worst form of information that, in my opinion, that a police officer can get, because it can be so misleading. And I've seen it happen over the years. But I know that I could walk up to somebody under ordinary circumstances and they won't remember me a day or 5 days or a month later. I mean, under ordinary circumstances. I also know that when I escaped in Aspen, I was seen, and I never left that area.
Exactly.
I mean, I escaped in Aspen if I went up in the mountains, and I wasn't equipped mentally or physically to handle, being up at 10,000 feet, even in the summertime, not knowing how to live off the land. It kind of wore me down. Nevertheless, I was just outside of Aspen in the mountains, and I was being seen at truck stops in Wyoming, in Seattle, in San Francisco, in Australia. Okay, and if I'd been in Australia, they would swear that that eyewitness who saw him was right. And I've seen this happen over and over again. So I'm saying, I know that I've seen people, who just never remembered seeing me, and I didn't have to hide, and I didn't have to disguise myself. I just had to be unobtrusive,
yet, when you were arrested, you weren't recognized by police officers, is that correct?
You talking about here in Florida?
Yes.
Oh, sure, yeah, no, I wasn't, I had to tell them, I was in their custody for 2 or 3 days. And I was
saying
and I was on the 10 most wanted list at the time. And I had to tell them, they didn't believe who I was, I mean, when I told them.
when you were a fugitive and then you became aware that you were on the 10 most wanted list, did that have any bearing on the way you acted or behaved, or no big deal one way or the other? It's a matter of survival for you at that point, continuous survival.
My opinion is, I'll be quite frank with you, that I'm not trying to be negative, or what would be the word, or insult your intelligence or anything, but I don't think y'all catch anybody, really. I think, and there are exceptions, okay, sure, but I think generally guys learn to catch themselves.
Do you think sometimes they want to be caught?
I don't know.
But don't want to give up? Is that the difference?
I never wanted to get caught, I can tell you that. There's no doubt in my mind. I mean, that's a pop theory. No one was pop psychological theory, but I never wanted to get caught. I was never worried about FBI posters because my knowledge of how the human mind works told me that, unless I just stood there in the post office next to it, grinning stupidly, I never feared being identified based upon a photograph, because I know that photographs versus reality distort. And if you just act normal, people are not going to say. If you act weird, then they're going to say, I wonder what's wrong with you, and you're going to stand out. But being on the run, I wasn't worried about
That's Ted Bundy, though.
being
There
caught.
aren't a whole lot of Ted Bundys out there that aren't wanted posters. In other words, other individuals that do see them will act differently. They will,
Well, you have to take, I would certainly, as someone a fugitive, such as I was, I was aware of, believe me, I wasn't oblivious to my status and the fact that I had to be concerned. But
if you were guilty as charged, we would consider you an organized type of person. Same as if I were doing those things based upon my abilities and intelligence and knowledge and whatnot, I would be doing things in an organized way. I wouldn't be real concerned about the posters either, because I feel the same way about people as you do. However, Joe Blow, this organized guy, he's going to panic. He's the guy that's going to start wearing a bandage on his eye, and the guy that's going to grow a beard and dye his hair, and things like that. So, statistically, I'm not trying to justify the way we do things, but obviously I think you can see statistically that it does help in many situations.
well, yeah, it's something you can't avoid.
Your particular situation.
You can't avoid doing it. You can't ignore doing it because, you would seem to be negligent in your duties if you didn't put these posters out, because that's what's expected of people who are looking for fugitives. But realistically, there are people who are going to see, who think that everybody goes around looking for people on FBI posters, whereas it's just simply absurd. That just doesn't happen.
Well, to me, it's a stressor. The more stress you put on the guy,
Yeah.
the more chances the guy's going to make a mistake or do something stupid. And it's a stressor to a lot of people to see the whole picture. Nobody else in that room would recognize him. He knows that's him, and therefore he assumes they see him the same way.
You're right. That's exactly what happens. And if you fall into that trap, you create your own stress. And the more paranoid you become, the more likely it is you get caught, because you start acting differently. But if you realize that person on that picture is not me, okay, you say, that's not me, that guy, my name's this, and I'm acting okay. And people are only going to think that I'm the person on that poster if I start acting in ways that make them think that I should be on that poster,
Well, sure, they meet here, so Prime Minister.
Whatever your preference is, if you want some time alone.
It's our general opinion that you will be back our opinion you'll be back in the general population before too much longer. We would like maybe to pursue this further with you sometime when this extra stress gets out of your life and all these problems are diminished. So, is that a fair statement?